For over 30 years, computers, music, movies, and mobile phones have all been transformed by Apple's Steve Jobs. He's been called a brilliant visionary.
He's the Thomas Edison of our time.
He and Wozniak took time off their day jobs to set up shop in the family garage.
We didn't have a telephone to phone the computer stores in the garage. That was in Steve's bedroom.
The team's first computer, the Apple I. It was a circuit board that users would generally build into a makeshift wooden box. As the tech industry in Silicon Valley took off, Jobs saw opportunity. To bring their ideas to life, the Apple team needed capital. Jobs convinced angel investor Mike Markkula to invest around $90,000 and a line of credit in the fledgling company. In exchange, Markkula got 1/3 ownership and started a 20-year career with Apple Computer. It was exactly what they needed to create their new computer, the Apple II. It became the first highly successful, mass-produced personal computer. At 23, Jobs and the Apple team were soon making more money than they knew what to do with. The next question was, where do they go from here?
Steve was always worried about competition from companies like IBM and everybody else in the world, and how are we going to avoid them? And you've got to stay out in the technology lead.
In 1979, after a stock deal worth an undisclosed amount, Steve Jobs was allowed access to what was known as the treasure trove of Silicon Valley. It was Xerox PARC, the company's famed research and development laboratory. Jobs and his team saw the future here, the way computers would be used, including the use of graphics and a small device that had not yet been revealed to the outside world, a mouse.
So he went back to Apple and grabbed people who he worked with there and said, you know, you've got to see this.
And you'd see 2 programs at once, and I was stunned. And you'd see 3 programs at once, and I thought, oh my God, once you have this machine, you're never going to want to go back. It's a one-way door. Your computers are going to be this way, and you'll never go back.
Although Jobs was the founder and creative force of Apple, the Apple board of directors wanted an experienced executive to be president of the company. Pepsi CEO John Sculley. For Apple Computer to thrive, they also needed another successful product. Jobs threw himself into another project, a computer created by Apple employee Jeff Raskin that would use similar technology but be available to consumers at a much lower price. The project was named the Macintosh. He set up shop in an outlying building in the Apple complex and took a small team of Apple's best engineers with him.
IBM wants it all and is aiming its guns on its last obstacle to industry control, Apple. Will Big Blue dominate the entire computer industry, the entire information age? Was George Orwell right about 1984?
Today we celebrate the first glorious anniversary of the Information Purification Directives. We have created, for the first time in all history, a garden of pure ideology, where each worker may bloom, secure from the pests, obeying contradictory thoughts. Our unification of thoughts is more powerful a weapon than any fleet or army on earth. We are one people, with one will, one resolve, one cause. Our enemies shall talk themselves to death, and we will bury them with their own confusion. We shall prevail.
On January 24th, Apple Computer will introduce Macintosh. And you'll see why 1984 won't be like 1984.
When the exhausted team finished, they had a revolutionary new computer. The computer was beautiful, but had limited functionality. Steve Jobs and Apple Computer hoped the Macintosh would live up to its hype, but sales were a disappointment. Internally, trouble was brewing at Apple Computer. Tension in the company rose as an internal power struggle threatened to tear it apart.
And much to Steve's surprise, the board sided with Sculley.
Jobs was 30 years old. He sold all but one share of his Apple stock. Taking 5 top managers, in 1985, Jobs moved on to start a computer company called Next. It had been 10 years since he'd been fired from Apple, and the drama and turmoil at the company continued to get worse. Scully's replacement, Michael Spindler, was also gone, and a third CEO, Gil Amelio, was struggling to keep the company afloat. Apple's market share could not break 11%. And their ousted co-founder was sitting on an operating system that could save them.
This is why they ended up going back to Jobs, because they wanted Next's operating system.
In an ironic and stunning turn of events, Apple Computer bought Next for over $400 million. Steve Jobs returned to the company he helped create and became interim CEO.
I've been back about 8 to 10 weeks, and we've been working really hard. We started with the product line. We looked at the product roadmap going out for a few years, and we said a lot of this doesn't make sense, and it's way too much stuff, and there's not enough focus. And so we actually got rid of 70% of the stuff on the product roadmap. I mean, I couldn't even figure out the damn product line after a few weeks. I kept saying, well, what is this model? How does this fit? And I started talking to customers, and they couldn't figure it out either. And so you're going to see the product line get much simpler, and you're going to see the product line get much better. And there's some new stuff coming out that's incredibly nice.
Once back at Apple, Jobs' characteristic flair for marketing came back in full force.
Our customers want to know who is Apple and what is it that we stand for. Where do we fit in this world? In our first brand marketing campaign in several years is to get back to that core value. The things that Apple believed in at its core are the same things that Apple really stands for today. And so it is what we are about. It touches the soul of this company.
Here's to the crazy ones, the misfits, the rebels, the troublemakers, the round pegs in the square holes, the ones who see things differently. They're not fond of rules, and they have no respect for the status quo. You can quote them, disagree with them, glorify or vilify them. About the only thing you can't do is ignore them, because they change things. They push the human race forward. While some may see them as the crazy ones, we see genius. Because the people who are crazy enough to think they can change the world are the ones who do.
One of the reasons why I thought the words were so perfect is I think you literally could have hung a sign that said "Think Different" in the garage when Wozniak and Jobs created their company. It would have been appropriate then, as it is today.
Jobs was back at Apple Computer, but the company was still in trouble and needed a lot more than the morale boost that came with the return of its founder. It needed a hit product. Jobs turned to industrial designer Jonathan Ive, who in this rare interview talked about how he redesigned what had become a boring beige box.
A lot of people at that point in time were nervous around computers, around technology. So a clear goal was, how we can make the product accessible, not intimidating. How we can make it just so simple to use.
No computer had ever looked anything like that. It was transparent. You could see the guts of it. It looked like it came out of the Jetsons or something.
The iMac was an astounding success.
The thing was the biggest selling computer of all time, 6 million units sold, and it really sort of set the stage for Apple's comeback.
Slowly, Apple's fortunes began to change. In an era of product research, Steve Jobs is a one-man focus group.
There's a famous Henry Ford quote: if he had asked people what they wanted, he would have built them a faster horse. A lot of companies try to figure out what people want and then build that, and Apple doesn't do that.
He doesn't listen to his customers at all. That's the last person he's going to listen to, because they haven't got a clue what they want, because they've never seen it. He's inventing this stuff before anyone's seen anything like it.
In 2000, Jobs dropped the interim title and became permanent CEO of Apple Computer. Soon after, he saw the future, and it was not a personal computer.
This is the best thing I think we've ever done.
In October 2001, Jobs unveiled something that even for Apple was groundbreaking.
The iPod went from concept to market in about 8 months.
The big design story is clearly the interface, and I think the simplicity of the buttons and of the jog wheel completely belie how powerful, how effective the interface truly is. It's really, really straightforward. Our goal was to design the very, very best MP3 player we could, to design something that could become an icon. And certainly as a design team, I can't remember the last time where we were collectively lusting after a product as badly as we are after an iPod.
On May 15, 2001, Jobs unveiled an entirely new way to bring his products to consumers. The Apple stores began to show staggering success.
We had 26 million visitors during the holiday quarter in our retail stores.
In 2007, after a frightening health scare, Steve Jobs was back on stage for one of the most important launches in Apple's history. It was a product Apple had been secretly developing for years.
It's a revolutionary mobile phone.
There was so much buzz about that. That was estimated to be worth $400 million. That's all you could read about from October through to January. But there wasn't a goat farmer in Afghanistan that hadn't heard about the iPhone.
Steve, I love you!
No one had any idea that Apple was going to change the game in the way that it did once again with the iPhone.
It was far more than a phone. This is handheld computing.
Then, at an iPhone event in June of 2008, Jobs' appearance had dramatically changed. He was noticeably thinner and frail. On January 14th, he finally said his health problems were more complex and announced a medical leave of absence.
In August 2011, Tim Cook was made CEO of Apple. Steve Jobs reduced his own role to chairman of the board. Then, less than 2 months later, he was gone after a long fight with pancreatic cancer. It was Tim Cook who was chosen to preside over the private memorial service for Apple employees. Thousands of people gathered as the face of the founder gazed down upon them from the side of the building. As much as any company can be about one guy, Apple was Steve Jobs. And now that Steve Jobs is gone, Apple is run by Tim Cook. Tim Cook is a manager with a vision who is following in the footsteps of a visionary turned manager.
Recently, we passed a major milestone that no one could have ever imagined. There are now more than 1 billion Apple devices in use around the world. Since we launched it less than a year ago, the Apple Watch has become the top-selling smartwatch in the world. But most importantly to us, customers love it. After the introduction of the new Apple TV last quarter, we had the largest sales ever for Apple TV. In 2017, we're looking forward to moving to our new campus and our new theater there. And we expect that we're going to have many, many opportunities to invite all of you to join us there. And we can't wait to see what's in store for the next 40 years and share it with you.